Okay. We'll call the Budget and Finance Subcommittee to order. Terry, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Collins?
Here.
Attorney Murphy?
Here.
Ms. Naylor?
Latonia, you're muted. Latonia?
Yes.
There she is. Okay.
Happens to me all the
Thank
time.
you.
Forget when you're muted.
Okay, so the first agenda item is to vote to recommend to the full school committee that approve the expenditure of $500,000 grant from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for the FY21 Remote Learning Support Services Grant.
Yeah, Lydia, would you want to take the lead on this?
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent. So we wrote a grant, if you recall, it was to add more Edgenuity licenses to help some of our children catch up, not just with credit recovery, but also with acceleration. We also have a contract with a company called Paper, which is an online 24 hours a day, 365 days a year tutoring service for all our children from kindergarten up to 12th grade. We hired a retiree callback to work with some of our partners in our community that were servicing our children live during our remote time. And so they were able to do some things with our children. And so we were able to hire a couple of retiree callbacks, one to help with the Edgenuity, and so that the children would have a teacher to kind of work with if they had any trouble when they were doing their courses. And the other one to work with those remote partners. And so that's what we use the money for.
Thank you. Questions? Any questions from the committee members? Hearing none, is there a motion to vote to recommend to the full school committee that we expend this grant?
So moved.
Thank you. And I see Peter nodding his head. That's a second, I guess. Thank you. Terry, would you call the roll?
Yep. Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Attorney Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Naylor?
Yes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a vote to recommend to the full school committee that approve the expenditure of a $10,000 816 grant from the elementary and secondary for digital literacy and computer science student learning devices.
So I'd like Paul and Denise Matuzak to present.
Thank you.
I'll hand it over
Guy.
to our Senior Administrator of Digital Learning Extraordinaire. Denise is going to take this one.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Superintendent. So we wrote this grant. It was a small grant, but it was really, really helpful for our schools. It came to us from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It was to further the work of our teachers in our district who are already implementing the computer science standards across the curriculum at their schools. And it allowed them to purchase some really necessary physical computing devices. We had 6 schools who submitted requests to buy some of these devices, which included Makey-Makeys, microbits. They're basically physical computing robotics tools that they use as part of their instruction in the class to augment and to allow kids to apply what they're learning regarding their computer science skills. So of the 6 schools, we had Boland, Indian Orchard, Liberty, Lincoln, our High School of Science and Technology, and also Central. All 6 applied and all 6 were awarded everything that they requested. So we're very happy about it.
Thank you. That's good news. Are there any questions from any committee members?
I have a clarifying question on the devices. Can you reiterate again what exactly they do?
Oh, sure. So some of them are robotics devices. And so for the Makey-Makeys, I'll just give you an example. Kids can use that and they use it in conjunction with their computer. And they can use coding, different Scratch program coding, for instance, or code.org. And they can code in the computer to allow the Makey-Makey to do different things, to produce sound, to produce lights. They can plug some of the Makey-Makeys, they can make things light up. They can use it to make music. They use it a lot, across the different curriculums too. Mostly in science, but they've also expanded to include different activities that they can use these for in ELA and math, and really across all the different content areas within school. It's a lot with programming and coding, and having kids think about coding and, algorithms and different steps, computational thinking, and how they would go about coding things and debugging things and actually making something work.
So is this something, how many devices are we talking about?
It was different amounts, depending on which of the schools, we're talking about. So, typically a microbit is about $20, for one of those units. In the classrooms, a couple of kids can work together when they're using that in conjunction with their coding, to apply what they're learning. The Makey about $50, so depending on how much money, we had a cap of $2,000 around that for each one of the schools, and they pretty much maxed out that money. So depending on the individual units that they wanted to purchase, they had $2,000 max that they could apply for.
Thank you. And just one last question. Are these devices or the purposes of them, is it for like enrichment activity, or is it science-based, or does each school have their own purpose as to why they wanted to have these devices?
Well, ideally, we're hoping that they're using these across the curriculum because they're really based on computer science concepts, which go across all the content areas to develop kids with problem solving and computational thinking skills. So ideally, that's what it is. Different schools are doing things differently depending on their staffing complement. Some schools, have instructional technology teachers working in conjunction with other teachers in English, math, science, and social studies, and allowing those teachers to see ways to integrate that across different content areas. Other schools are working, like at the high school level, they have typically a science and engineering teachers who are working with robotics, and they're using those in individual classrooms.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, a motion to recommend to the full school committee that we approve the expenditure of the $10,816 from the Department of Elementary Secondary for the FY21 digital literacy and computer science student learning devices.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Terry, would you call the roll?
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
and Ms. Naylor.
Yes.
Thank you. The last item on the agenda is a vote to recommend to the full school committee that it approve the superintendent's FY22 recommended budget. We've had the presentation twice. Do the committee members want to go through it, or do you just want to ask any questions that you have?
I don't have any questions. I'm perfectly happy with the way the budget looks. I think it looks great.
I don't have any questions about the particular budget here, but I do have a question. I know Pat answered this before. I want to make sure I got it right. There's ESSER funds that are coming down the pike, and I know that you kind of included them, what the expectation of it will be in the budget. But I wonder, is there going to be other funding coming down, or is it a possibility that we may get more than what we're anticipating?
Yes, great question. So right now, the House is actually recommending a higher Student Opportunity Act amount that would come to the general fund. And so we've had some internal discussions, and if it makes it through the Senate and the governor approves it, then all of that additional money that we may be getting, we're planning to push out to the schools for them to build in their spending plans.
Wonderful.
Just like we do with the other student opportunity money?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Good plan.
yeah.
Now,
I think our principals are going to love that.
We're voting with the best information we have at the time, right? Because of the timing, we have to take the budget vote now. But our hope is, and it looks promising, that we may be getting additional Student Opportunity Act money. They're going to accelerate it a little bit from what I can see.
So, go ahead, Latonia, did you, okay. Thomas, if we get something
I
other
did
than
have
the student
another,
go ahead. Go ahead, Latonia.
can you hear me? I hit a drop
Yeah.
zone, so I apologize if you couldn't hear me. I have a question. I know that we have a policy on ratios of support staff, whether it be like counselors or APs and stuff like that. Do we require folks to adhere to those? Even if we have excess money where they could possibly still purchase like additional counselors or AP or whatever the case may be, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. With the Opportunity Act money, they go beyond the ratios in the allocation plan. So they all get the basic ratio. And with all the extra sources of money, they're buying more. So they're buying more intervention teachers, counselors, paras, could be classroom teachers. It'll all be extra above the allocation, but they all get the base allocation.
Okay.
And they put a spending plan together on what they want to buy based on their data and the needs of their kids. But this is all extra. So it's a great question.
So Pat, if we get other extra monies, other than the student opportunity money, we would bring it back before the committee and plug it into whatever departments it should go into?
Yes, even the Student Opportunity Act money we'll bring back to you to vote on, but you know, anything we do, we'll have to bring back to you to do an amendment on to increase the budget, or hopefully increase, not decrease, but to change the budget.
Positive thinking, I like it, Pat.
Good.
But it does look positive for the Opportunity Act money, and our folks are ready to get that out to the schools, and our principals know if that's coming, that we're going to add on to their allocation for their spending plan.
Excellent. So is there a motion at this point to recommend to the full school committee that it approve the superintendent's FY22 recommended budget?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Terry, would you call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
and Miss Naylor.
Yes.
Thank you. That's every item on the agenda, so a motion to adjourn, and then 5:30 is when our regular meeting starts. So we'll log out of this one and log back in. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And Latonia seconded. Thank you, Latonia. Would you call the roll, Terry?
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
and Miss Naylor.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll see you all
Thank
in
you,
about
guys.
14 minutes.
Thank you, everyone.